Welcome to PS Academy. I'm your host Istvan, digital marketer and marketing automation specialist, and in today's video I'll be talking about Facebook campaign objectives. This is going to be a two-parter video, and in the first part I'll be talking a little bit generally about Facebook campaign objectives, why they're important, what you should be considering, and so on and so forth. And of course I'll be tackling the first category of campaign objectives, which are awareness objectives. Now in the second part of this video, I'll be talking about consideration campaign objectives and conversion campaign objectives. These are really important, so make sure you stay tuned, subscribe, like this page, ring that notification bell so you also catch the second part of this video. If you're new to digital marketing and if you want to brush up on your skills, learn a couple of tips and tricks, make sure you follow us and share this video with a friend as well. In the last video, Facebook campaigns are split into three major structural elements. There's a campaign element, the ad set element, and the actual ad element. Now, as I showed you last time, in the campaign element, there's a lot going on regarding the actual objectives. And I also mentioned that objectives are really important, and if you master Facebook objectives, let me tell you, you're pretty much almost ready to professionally make advertising campaigns. So again, I want to stress this out a lot. Objectives are super important, and you're asking yourself, well, why are these objectives so important? Well, the simple answer is, objectives, in a very basic way, they're what you're asking from Facebook. So let's say you go to the store and you ask the clerk for bread. The clerk gives you bread. Well, the same goes with Facebook. If you ask Facebook for page likes, it'll give you page likes. If you ask Facebook for traffic on your website, it will give you traffic. And if you ask Facebook for sales, well, it'll get you sales. Now, of course, it's not as straightforward and not mutually exclusive. Sometimes you ask for traffic, you get a lot of traffic, but you get some sales as well. Sometimes you ask for sales, you'll get traffic, but also sales. But the main idea is, of course, that Facebook needs to understand what your main goal is, what the objective is. And that's why you need to select your objective very carefully. So as I mentioned, there are three kinds of different objectives for Facebook campaigns. There's awareness objectives, consideration objectives, and conversion objectives. I think they're pretty straightforward in their naming, in the sense that awareness objectives, they have to do with the awareness of your target audience. So do they know about your brand? Have they seen your products? If you're having a first interaction with your audience, awareness is pretty important, and that's how you actually catch their attention or get into the back of their minds. Consideration objectives, well, these are already a step ahead. So if with awareness you're dealing with a cold audience, people that have never heard about you, with consideration objectives you're already speaking about a warm audience, people that have had an initial interaction or at least have heard about your product, brand, or service. Now there's a lot of consideration objectives, and kind of the gist of these objectives is that people kind of have an interaction with you. It might be a first interaction, it might be a second interaction. Some of these consideration objectives you'll see, they're actually pretty high level already. For example, lead generation, where you're already getting a high level of engagement and contact. Some of them are pretty surface level, like video views, for example, where people are just engaging with your video content. And of course, conversion objectives, these are the most important ones, and these will bring you the most value. Conversion objectives, they actually get you concrete stuff like sales, store traffic in your physical store. They get you basically these final actions such as purchases, or depending on how you set them up, of course, they can also get you lower level actions such as add to carts or initiate checkouts, or people browsing a specific web page on your site. There's a lot you can do with conversion objectives, and the point of it, of course, is that here you're dealing already with a hot audience. So these are people that are actually going to take major steps with your business, like purchasing your product. But of course, I mentioned cold, warm, and hot audiences, and I wouldn't say that these things are like an objective rule. It's not like you can't run conversion objectives on a cold audience. Basically, what I'm saying is it's recommended that you run these conversion objectives on a hot audience, or at least a warm audience, because of course that's how you're gonna get more people to actually convert. So make a purchase, become a lead, and so on and so forth. And the same goes for consideration and awareness. It's not a rule that you need to run these on cold audiences or warm audiences. It's more of like a general guideline and a direction you should be considering. And you might be already asking this yourself. Well, if conversion objectives are so awesome that you can ask for sales or direct leads for your services, why wouldn't you always run conversion objectives? Well, it's not quite that simple. There's two things to consider here. First of all, in order to be able to run conversion objectives, you'll have to have a proper tracking system set up via a Facebook pixel. And this pixel, of course, needs to collect sufficient data in order to actually run these conversion objectives properly. Because before you show or exemplify to Facebook how a conversion objective happens on your website, it wouldn't know what that means. So you could tell it, okay, I want sales, but Facebook doesn't necessarily know what a sale on your website looks like. So Facebook actually needs data in the Facebook pixel in order to optimize for such a conversion objective. And of course, secondly, running straight up campaigns that have like a sale conversion objective is like telling someone to buy your product without giving them any information, any backstory, any reason basically. Of course, in your ad, you're gonna give them a couple of reasons, but it's still very pushy, very straightforward, and very salesy, especially if we're talking about a cold audience. Until you actually get people ready to purchase your product, you need to convince them. And of course, the best way to convince them is by sequencing different objectives. So first you'll actually build some brand awareness. Let them hear your brand name a couple of times. After that, you'll get them to engage with some content, give you a couple of likes, maybe share one of your posts. Maybe you'll ask them to message you to get a coupon code or something like that. So basically you're sequencing from awareness campaigns into consideration campaigns, and then at the end you can actually push forward with these conversion campaigns to get the sale, to get the lead, and so on and so forth. So it's a whole dialogue or a conversation or a story you're telling to your audience. And if you have some marketing fundamentals, you'll already know about a sales funnel. Well, basically Facebook ads and these campaign objectives, they represent the sales funnel. At the top level, you have awareness, so actually getting people to recognize your brand, to hear about your brand. In the middle level, you have consideration, so having some interaction so they actually start thinking actively about your brand or product. And at the bottom level, the top of the inverted pyramid, or bottom if you will, you have the actual sale, the purchase, the conversion into a lead. So of course there's still a lot to discuss about how to sequence ad, which are the best sequences, how you can actually do this sequencing and keep targeting the same audience. But I think for now it's great to have this conceptual understanding of how these things work. Now let's actually get into the awareness objectives. Now, if you checked out Facebook Ads Manager, there's actually only two awareness objectives: brand awareness and reach. These two are both very awesome tools that you can use, and it's an exceptional way of getting people to have their first interaction with your brand. Now, brand awareness specifically works with a metric we call brand recall. What's brand recall, you ask? Well, it's basically how many people remember your brand after seeing an ad. So there's a very specific way Facebook measures brand recall. It gives people a poll question after a while, so it displays the ad, and after a while people get a poll question in their newsfeed asking a couple of brand names and saying, okay, for which brand name have you recently seen an ad, or which brand name do you remember, or things like this. And of course, if people choose the brand that has had a brand awareness campaign in their feed, then it means they have brand recall. So they saw your ads and they can recall seeing your ads after a certain period of time. This is a pretty in-depth awareness tool because not only are you showing glimpses of your product, service, or brand to these people, but you're also sort of checking if they remember seeing these ads. The second objective in the awareness category is reach. And reach is pretty similar to brand awareness, but there's a crucial difference between the two. If you know the metric reach in Facebook, what it basically means is the number of unique users from your targeted audience that have seen your ad, or at least they have been delivered your ad into their news feeds or various other placements. So the important part over here is that this is unique number of users. That's the objective over here, to get out to as many unique users as possible. So what's basically the major difference is that brand awareness regularly has a higher frequency. So the ads are shown multiple times to the same user in order to create this brand recall effect. So you really want people to remember your ads and your brand or your product, then you're going to use brand awareness in order to have a higher frequency. So basically you're displaying the ad multiple times. In the case of reach, you don't necessarily want to display your ad multiple times. You don't necessarily want to create a high recall. You just want to get your ad out to as many people as possible. And of course, this tool also has its uses. And in general, these awareness campaigns, they have a lot of uses, and especially when you're launching maybe new products, a new line of services, your brand is new, or you're entering a new market, you generally want to run brand awareness and reach campaigns in order to pretty much spread the message, have people see your product, see your brand, hear your name, and so on and so forth. So that's basically what you're going to be doing. You're going to create this first minimal interaction, so to say, but trust me, this minimal interaction, as small as it is, it's still really important for your brand, and you really need it in order to have your audience's attention and have them get to know you. All right, we covered everything we wanted to in this first part, but remember, we're going to have a second part to this video in which I'm going to be talking about the consideration campaign objectives and the conversion campaign objectives, and these are really, really interesting, so make sure you tune in. If you learned something new or understood a concept better, make sure you share this video with another marketer. Give this video a like, show some appreciation in the comments, and I'll see you in part 2 on PS Academy.